All right, everybody, here we go. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. So let's get right down to it. Going to talk about listening, and we're going to talk about the 4 personalities. So, first things first. Most people are not good listeners, right? You can hear well if you have the gift of hearing and auditory skills. You can hear, but you're not necessarily a very good listener, right? We can hear when our parents are talking to us. We may not be listening to what they say. So people aren't good listeners, and you got to keep that in mind with your audience because it's important to know that. And when you are up there and talking in front of somebody, let's say if it's an audience of 30 people, there's more listening in the room than talking. One person is talking. 29 people are listening, and they're all listening differently. They're listening the way they normally listen. So think if you get in front of a room of 300 people, 299 people are listening. One is talking. And when we listen with filters. The audience listens with filters because remember, you are an audience member most of the time. And when you are listening through filters such as beliefs, values, attitudes, memories, assumptions, whatever it is. You may say something, it may trigger an image of past and future for them. It may remind them of a past experience. And if you are talking about the time you went sledding in the winter because you make some mention of the snowstorms that are happening, they are immediately gone with a memory. They're remembering a past experience when they went sledding. You've got to bring them back. There is no way to control this, right? We have to stop being controlling. The audience is going to waver in and out. It's up to you to be aware of these things and aware of the things that you say. So if you start to get political, people might have some beliefs or some prejudices towards you. If you have an attitude about something, they may have an attitude about something. There's all sorts of things in the way people listen, so you want to be careful with your words so that you do not send them down a rabbit hole away from what you were talking about. Again, you cannot control the audience's reactions to what you're saying because you don't know them, but know that there are certain ways that you are going to present, the stories that you're going to tell, the colors and the smells and the touches that you're going to give out there when you are vulnerable and you're taking a chance. They are going to turn their filters on, and you may lose them, you may not lose them. Okay? There are external distractions. When you are talking, you may hear somebody drop something. Okay? Everybody's going to turn and look. Everybody's going to say, what was that? Rather than ignore it, say, whoa, it looks like somebody dropped a can of Coke out there. Acknowledge it, right? Because if there's an external distraction, everybody pays attention to it. We've all seen the movie. This is the dog named Doug who can talk, and when he's talking to the man, as soon as he sees a squirrel, he goes, squirrel! And he turns away and he loses his attention. Your audiences are exactly like that, easily distracted. There are trigger words. You are going to say something that is going to trigger and elicit emotion from an audience member. You may get up there and say something about the past election and it's going to set people off. You're going to get up there and say something about a time that you fell and skinned your knee, and it's going to remind them when they did or when their kid did. Or you're going to say something about, boy, I'm hungry, and they're going to say, so am I, when is lunch? Again, you cannot control this, but there are going to be trigger words, and you're going to say them. So you need to think about what you're saying. You just don't get up there willy-nilly and wing it. Steve Jobs, every single presentation he gave was masterminded to every single word that he spoke. They were one-act plays. Do you want to be like that? Possibly. Takes practice, takes time. This is a great quote from Jerry Seinfeld. According to most studies, people's number 1 fear is public speaking. Number 2 is death. Death is number 2. This means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. This is that whole fear thing coming back into play. And people are afraid to get up there and speak. It's the number 1 fear. People would rather be dead than speak in public. So you got to be careful who you are and how you get up there, because as soon as you start saying trigger words and you start seeing you're losing the audience, the fear starts to set in, and then you're living up to the number 1 fear. I just like throwing this joke in there. So now let's talk about the 4 personalities. Hopefully you have taken the test and you have figured out who you are. If you haven't, it's up there on the website. You should download it and figure out who you are, because it either before or after this will help make sense. So there are these 4 quadrants. There are task-oriented people and people, right? There are ask people who ask a lot of questions, and there are tell people who tell you things. They don't ask questions, they tell you what they feel. And in these quadrants are 4 different types of personalities. There's the analytical. Analytical is someone who is task-oriented and asks questions. The most important thing to the analytical is to be right. Not necessarily them, but the information that you are giving them has to be correct. factual. You have to know what you're talking about. The driver is task-oriented and tells you things. They don't necessarily ask you questions, and all the driver cares about is results. Oftentimes, the drivers are the bosses. They are the managers. They are the directors. They are the key decision makers. So when you are giving a pitch, you are giving an idea, you're trying to get someone to buy your services or hire you, know that the driver is focused on results. The amiable, they ask a lot of questions and they're people. What do they crave? Approval. The amiable person wants to be liked. They want to be part of the group. They want you to like them. So when you're giving a presentation and you know that you have an amiable person in them, include them. And if they have a good idea, they want you to say, that was a good idea, Josie. Last but not least, the expressive. These are people who tell you stories and are people, and what they care about is recognition. They want to be recognized for the great things that they do. They want to be recognized for the great ideas that you are putting forth because they want to be a part of it. Recognition. So, when you look at it this way, when you look at the ask people, they have an indifferent handshake. They're quiet in voice and posture. These are the people who are quiet and sometimes lean back in their chair and kind of slump. They ask questions. They do not make statements. They are like, what do you think of that? I don't really agree with you. That's interesting. How did you get to that? On the other side, the driver and the expressive, firm handshake. Aggressive. Their tone changes in voice. They make quick and clear statements. And they tend to lean forward. This is the person with the elbows on the desk, leaning forward, looking at you, thinking, when is this going to end so I can start talking? The task people. Now, the drivers fit into this as well, but not as much. Infrequent eye contact, right? They're not really looking at you. They're poker faced. You have no idea how they're feeling. They act with caution. They want facts and details. They have limited hand use and no small talk. These are the people, when you get into the room, you can't say, you're not going to believe the weekend I had. Now, on the other hand, the people at the bottom, great eye contact, animated facial expressions, smiles and nods and frowns. These are the people when you were talking, they go, uh-huh, ooh, oh yeah, right? Little effort for facts. Oh, I don't care if that's true. Just tell me. Keep going. Their palms are opened up and they share personal feelings. So when you know you have people in the room, the amiable and expressives, they want you to know how they feel and they want to know how you feel. They want to know feelings. They love small talk. Ooh, tell me about your weekend. Oh, that was amazing. Now, here's the way they talk. Analytical, they inquire and they have indirect assertion as same as the amiable. The driver and the expressive state and command things. And they have direct assertion. They're right at you, right? Tone of speech. The analytical and the amiable, their voices don't vary much. They're quieter. The expressive and the driver, the two differences between them is that the expressive gets easily excited, right? This is the person who says, oh my God, that's awesome. But the driver gets loud and uses his or her voice to emphasize points. You are correct. Same with the expressive. I cannot believe you said that. They get loud and they use their voice. Listening pattern, analytical. They listen, but they don't look like they are. They're the ones sitting back, looking at your PowerPoint, looking at your spreadsheet, thinking of things that they want to ask you. The amiable is a good listener, and they react to what you say, and they care. The expressive listens as well. They react to what you say, and they talk a lot. They're the ones who say, oh, wait, what? Oh, that's great. Let me tell you about this. And the driver, poor listener. Why? Because they want to control the conversation. They will interrupt you, and they will summarize what they say. And if you can find the mistake on this slide, I will give you an A for the class. So when dealing with the driver, here's what you do. You focus on the present, you be brief, you use short-term results, you give them options, and you let them feel as if they're in control. So you say something, you look at them and say, what do you think? Do you think that's a good idea? And you focus on what's happening now. Do not focus too far on the future. They don't care. They want results. Don't give too much info because they will be overwhelmed and they don't want facts and figures. Don't be ambiguous. Don't get personal. Don't tell them how you feel or what you did this weekend or what you're doing tonight, and don't back down. They love it when you debate them and you stick by and you believe in what you're saying. That's the driver. The expressive. Focus on the future. They want to know what's going to happen. Tell stories. Seek their input. What do you think of that? You think that's a good idea? Compliment them. Oh, Bob, that was a great idea. I love what you're doing with this. I think you should keep doing that. I'm going to encourage your creativity. With the expressive, don't get straight down to business. Don't start the meeting saying, okay, let's go. More along the line, start the meeting and saying, can you believe the lunch they served today? I haven't had chicken salad like that in years. Don't dwell on details. They will get bored. Don't be impatient with tangents. Let them go off. Don't be too serious and don't put down their enthusiasm. They get excited. Let them know that you appreciate it. Amiable, focus on tradition. They get very uncomfortable if you go outside the lines. Be flexible, though. Be personal. Allow time to feel good. Power of the pause. Emphasize team approach. We're all going to do this together. Don't push them for too much detail. Don't hurry them. Don't be cool or impersonal. Don't confront them and don't attack them. They will cower and run away. I can say this because I am one. And when dealing with an analytical, you have to focus on the past, present, and future. They want to know what you did, how you got where you are, and where you plan on taking them. They want as many facts as they want. They want you to focus on details, and they want you to tell exactly what you're going to do. We're going to get to 15% growth. How are we going to do it? Like this, because in the past we didn't. Right? Give them time to ponder. Power of the pause is important for them, and assure that they're right. Not necessarily them, but the facts and the figures and the data that you're putting forward. Don't say, well, I think this is what Google Analytics said last week. They will, at that moment, you will lose them. Don't be vague or illogical. Don't be intolerant of details. If they say, can you go deeper into this? Say, yes, I can. Don't overlook the past. If they say, but what happened last year? Say, well, it's not that big a deal. No. To them, it is a big deal. Don't rush and don't be overly casual. So you've got 4 different types of personalities and 4 things to think about, right? So you got to figure out how you're going to deal with them. So take the test and look on that last page, and you can see how they view themselves and how you view them, and you'll have a really good sense as to how you cater to each of their needs, because they're all needy. But figure out in the audience who the decision maker is. Chances are it's a driver. But if it's an amiable or an expressive, you got to give them their time. Got to give them their time to talk, because you want them to like you and you want them to feel good. So curveball questions. It's an old picture of a Red Sox player. I'm a big Red Sox fan. It's John Lackey. He's no longer there. Thank God. Curveball questions are going to come at you. And when you have a curveball question, what's the thing that you do? You repeat the question. Someone asks you some question, you have no idea what they're talking about. Repeat the question. It does 2 things. 1, it gives you a chance to stall and think about how you're going to answer it. But what it also does is it gives them a sense to say, oh, did they not understand what I asked? Because if that's what I asked, that's not what I meant. Curveball questions are going to come at you all the time. And sometimes you're going to know the answer and sometimes you're not. But what you want to do is you want to relax and take a deep breath. Remember, the last thing the audience wants to see is a speaker or presenter fail and lose their footing and fall down. Relax. It's just a question. You may or may not have the answer. Listen and pause. Oh, you want to know how we got from A to B to C? Is that what you're asking? That's a great question. Let me think about that. Repeat the question, as I said. And here's the last thing that I say on all of these presentations, the most important slide of all of them. It's okay to say, I don't know. Don't try to fake your way through it. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer to it, say, I don't know. But what you don't do is you don't end it there. You say, I don't know, but I will get the answer for you. Don't all of a sudden look at somebody in the audience and say, Susie, do you know the answer to this? Because at that point, the power's gone away from you, and now they're going to pay attention to Susie, and they're no longer going to pay attention to you. Saying, I don't know, shows confidence. Saying, I don't know, shows vulnerability. Saying, I don't know, is honest and authentic because you don't know the answer. And instead of saying, well, we got to A by going down the street, got to B by doing here, and C, I think we got here this way. Your analytical person in the audience is saying, oh my God, this person's off their rocker. The driver's saying, what are you talking about? And then you're going to back down. You're going to lose your audience. You're going to lose their confidence. You are no longer being authentic and real if you try to BS your way through an answer. Curveball question comes at you, take a breath. You don't know it, say I don't know, but I'll get the answer for you. And that's all I got to say.